But yeah, you know, we got a lot to cover tonight, so I figured dive right in. However, I've seen there's a couple of new faces, I think, right? So we've been establishing I won't call it I don't know, tradition of, yeah, the first meeting you attend, you know, if you could, you know, when everyone's first meeting, they stand up and say their reason why, right? The reason we're still sitting in this hot room right now, you know, oftentimes fighting a thankless fight. Yeah, so I don't know if any volunteers, any first timers, I don't know, I've missed a couple meetings myself, so maybe there isn't any.
I am Boo Luntz, and I live primarily in Maryland, but I grew up in the Boston area and gave all my life. I'm in the cannabis industry in Maryland. I have a small company that does networking events and education events with two other women, and they also own a dispensary where I've been working, so I'm really getting my feet wet in different areas of the industry, and I love it. I love Cape, and I'm here right now for part of the summer, so I just want to come and meet everybody.
Welcome.
Paul Clemens. I represent a company called Craft. We do LED grow systems out of a company out of Canada called Emerson. And I guess a bunch of flyers here for you to explain it all. If you have any questions, you'll just call me.
Great. Great to see the supply chain. All right, so I think we'll dive right in. I think I do a lot in Barnstable, right? But I think that we'd like to hear what's going on the rest of the Cape, right? So Dave DeWitt from Craft Cooperative is going to walk us through what's going on out in Truro. Really looking forward to it. Get to stuff
So we'll start actually with my partner Tim McCarthy.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
Tim's going to get the first slide, and then I'm going to jump into the rest here, because the first slide is really important for where we got started.
Everyone understands that the category of craft cultivators is really crucial, I think, to the industry in this state, without a doubt, and I think nationwide. I've used cannabis as a medicine for 30 years because I cohabitate with HIV. No dispensaries. I've had my local friends in Truro grow the medicine for me for years. Then comes the adult use law. I'm saying to myself, how then can I allow my friends an opportunity to be a part of this very business? The problem with the medical was it was vertically integrated. Who's got $1 million and the ability to not only grow the seed to a plant, but also then to harvest it and sell it? Nobody has that unless you've got a big company. So the point was, I was gestating on that, and I went to a party on the very first day it became legal, December 15, 2016, celebrating. And I ran into my friend, then State Senator-elect, Julian. I had just helped him get elected a couple of months before that. And I explained to him the situation, that there are so many farms in Truro and across Cape Cod, not to mention around the state, that really have the capabilities and skills to be able to produce this. Well, how do we let them in? So we're brainstorming it, and in Truro, as well as most of Cape Cod, we've got aquaculture. It is aquaculture, the seafood is, the oysters and clams are the most dangerous food you can get. People can die from eating them. But the state licenses individual people to have their little shellfish grants. They then collect those shellfish. They cannot sell them directly to the public. They must go through a co-op. So Julian has the idea, well, let's use that as a model for how we're going to do this. Everyone's afraid of marijuana. They think it's this huge criminal enterprise. How can we placate them? Well, we can use a very successful model, and that's exactly what Julian came up with. And he approached Representative Sarah Peake. She then sponsored the same thing within the House bill. He sponsored it in the Senate bill, so when it made it into committee, it passed, and the governor signed it into law. Those two politicians will be here at this next meeting. They'll be the featured guests, and I'll have the opportunity to introduce them. It's phenomenal to see that our local politicians really did their job, even before one of them was sworn in, by taking into consideration the problems that their constituents have, and then be able to come up with a real sensible solution. And then he worked across the state to really make certain that the other members of the House and Senate had an opportunity to see how their own people would benefit from it. The other thing I'd like to mention, and Dave will go into this in real detail, is that as a small business person, you have to make all the decisions. And how do you know what's right? How do you know? You really don't. I always find that my magic and my business really do better when I work with other people, because there's a shared sense of decision, there's a shared sense of understanding and knowledge, and that's what the Craft Cooperative has certainly done for us in Truro. And we're now taking that knowledge ourselves and educating our town on it. It's not an easy thing. And I hope that some of you in here tonight will also participate in some sort of a craft cooperative here on Cape Cod, because we really can be the backbone of this industry on Cape. Thanks so much.
So my name is David DeWitt, and I've been farming in Truro for 31 years. I'm actually qualified to speak with you today because well, I have my degree in plant and soil science from College of the Redwoods, which is located in Humboldt County, California. The primary crop of Humboldt County, California is cannabis. It has been forever. So I was deeply ingrained in that society. As I was there, moved on to Humboldt State University, became an associate professor, started the Arcata Co-op, the Arcata Educational Farm, all the while coming back and forth to Cape Cod, farming in Truro, back to California, back and forth. I was one of the earlier members of the Emerald Triangle Growers Association, which is one of the first grower associations in our country as far as cannabis goes. Doing the same basic thing, sharing genetics, sharing valleys, sharing water sources, sharing black irrigation pipe, whatever the case was. It was like kind of us against them in reality back then. It was very outlaw. We were completely breaking the law every day of our lives. But there was a very tight community in Northern California. Very hard to get into, but once you got into it, it was really a tight-knit family. And Tim kind of alluded to that by the way that our co-op has started to work with each other, with itself. So, like I said, I've been farming a long time. I have my degree in plant and soil science. So that kind of gives me a little bit of knowledge of to be here in front of you today, basically. So we got the license thanks to our representatives. The new license was born in Truro, and from there, 2 farms, Outdoor Organics and Dave's Greens. Dave's Greens is my farm. Outdoor Organics are 2 other growers that I lived in Humboldt with. They also lived on the street food. We're literally 2 doors down in Truro. Very close friends, Stephanie and Boz. Stephanie and Boz and I have been collectively growing cannabis for virtually 25 plus years, sharing genetics, working through harvest with each other, bouncing problems and ideas off each other. So we've already been a team working together. So once Tim and I became partners, then it all really started to roll. And adult use came out, and we're all voting for it. It's great. And we're like, let's do this. Let's become a co-op. Let's get together and work with each other. Already in Truro, we have a very good local farming community, and that's really what a craft cooperative is going to need. Is a group of farmers, we call them members, but you're going to need to gather everyone together that you can trust, that you can work with, and you can develop and build your things with. So now we have 5 members. We've come together under 1 license. So the Craft Cooperative license is 1 license, 100,000 square feet canopy. So we have Outdoor Organics. Outer Cape Cannabis Connection is Tim and I's business. Long Neck Artisanal Gardens, Pure Joy Farms, and Gilly Weeds. You can see she's into that, what is it? Harry Potter, there you go.
Harry Potter.
So our co-op family was born, okay? And we already knew each other, we were already friends, but now we are actually literally in business together. And there we are. That is a really gnarly group of people. But you can see our we're different ages, different sexual preferences. We've got Vietnam vets. I'm a disabled person. We've got women. We're really pretty much across the board. We could use someone of color. I would appreciate in that picture, but unfortunately that we don't have too much of that in Truro. So it was time to get to work. Okay, so once once all this starts to unfold, and remember back when they put out the draft regulations on December 21st, I think it was, of last year, the CCC opened up the doors and said, we'd like to, you know, we want to hear back from you, we want to get some feedback, we want to, you know, so we spent a month or so, I think, with them, giving them feedback. They went all around the state. Tim went to many meetings, I went to many meetings, gave a lot of input, everywhere we could, really trying to promote. And there was actually, and in those, if any of you were in those meetings, so during those meetings, the farmers really came out. I mean, it was like a real voice we heard throughout the whole state. And it was like kind of like thinking this craft cooperative model may be the way that the farmers can get in this industry. You know, we've been growing plants in pots and in the soil I've been doing it for 31 years. I have the infrastructure, I have the knowledge, I have the pots, I have the irrigation systems, I have everything, you know. I was trained in Humboldt County, you know, I have genetic connections that are phenomenal. So it was time to like learn with CCCs and get involved, and we were all involved, and I personally watched every single meeting that the CCC had. And the benefit that did me, that helped me with, was that allowed me a really great knowledge of how these regulations are being created. The back talk in the room. When you read that document, it's really kind of plain and boring. But during that process, if you watch the debate amongst the 5 of them, you really learn what the issues were and what concerns were and that kind of stuff. So they're all still online. If you want to catch up, you can start watching them. And that was really beneficial that they put it all online. So once you get going, you need to study the CCC regulations and all the legal documents that pertain to cannabis. And you need to read it and read it again and read it again and read it again and just keep reading it until everything makes sense. And call someone if you got a question. There's a lot of us down willing to talk and help everyone. The goal here with our quick talk is to, hopefully, one of you will start a craft cooperative, okay? And we can keep this ball rolling, okay? So we formed a limited liability company for each farm and for High Dune Craft Cooperative. That's mandated by the state. We're going to want that anyways. Your own personal lawyer will do your farm, and you have to have a second different lawyer running the LLC for the High Dune, for your craft cooperative. Okay, find out what the hell your town is up to and begin to work collaboratively. I'm a little cynical because we've been battling churros for a long time. I'm the chair of the Ag Commission in my town, and I approach them to work collaboratively, and we try to get on board, like into a mutual, let's get the bylaws written so we can all get to work. Well, they were in this wait and see mode, right? Like, well, we didn't think anyone would, well, you know. So they're really delinquent in getting their job done. Okay, learn about your town bylaws, boards, and bullshit, okay? And once again, my cynicism is going to come back a little bit. But people will say one thing and do another. They'll stab you in the back. They're going to lie to you if they need to. If their town council says something, they go with it, okay? So most of us town council, we have KP Law. A lot of our towns here, we have the same town council. And they are not helping the cause. KP Law is not helping us. And every turn we go around. So watch your back, okay? Be prepared for someone to say something and then do another, and it continues to happen throughout the entire process. Attend every town board meeting regarding cannabis. Whether you're on the docket or not, if they're gonna use the word cannabis or marijuana, you should be in the back of that room listening, because it's gonna affect you. They're gonna say something or do something, and you don't wanna be caught off guard. We're fortunate that all of ours are videotaped, but that's the planning board, that's the board of selectmen, whoever it is talking about it. You need to be there and listening. There it is, right? I'm sorry to say, that is really necessary, okay? Get a smart lawyer and just start working it through, okay? All right, build your cooperative. The way we started was, we just got our members together. It was, you know, right around Boz and Steph's table, kitchen table, and we just started throwing stuff around. Like, let's just talk about what our ultimate dreams are here. Like, you know, all of us wanted to have legal cannabis, you know, someday. None of us thought it would ever happen. here it is. But now let's start to get down to the nuts and bolts. Like, we're all farmers. How do we want to do this? How do we want to see this happen for us? That's going to just be our ultimate dream, you know? So we started talking about dreams and how we could do it. And then we started talking about how do we get there, the reality of it, right? So the process was building a family and building some unity between all of us, okay? And then we decided to create your ideal cooperative business model. Like, what do you personally see as like how this model can run? How are our bylaws going to look like? What is the business model going to look like? What's our operating agreement going to be? Those kind of things. Really important to get just creative right off the bat, okay? And begin to work towards consensus. This word consensus is going to come up later as well. We pretty much voted, it didn't take too long, but we decided that we wanted to all be in agreement all the way through this process. And it hasn't been easy. It hasn't, I mean, you know, everyone has to vote yes. And if one person says no, well, then we got to go back to the table and start again until the hours go through, and then finally the yes, and we come up with a compromise that suits everybody. And it's been mostly easy, but there's been a lot of good sticking points. And I didn't include our funny videotape that we have, but we filmed everything. We feel like we're making history here. So we want to be in control of how the movie comes out. And Tim's a movie maker. He's a filmmaker, so it comes naturally. All right, so once all of us were on the same page, we began to create our bylaws, okay? Not an easy task. But fortunately, Google's there. Cooperative, agricultural cooperative bylaws. Boom, there's like 6,000 choices there. All right, but the important thing is the 7 principles of a cooperative. This is very important language. This is an actual thing, okay? In the CCC regulations, every craft cooperative has to abide by the 7 acting principles of a cooperative, okay? It's an international organization that created the 7 principles, but you have to follow those to be compliant with the CCC. That's going to differentiate the craft cooperative grower from your cultivator license, from your one-person, 100,000 square foot operation, which is going to be typically much larger capital investment and stuff like that. So it's going to it helps protect the co-op from having corporations come in and really kind of like say we're a co-op, but we're really a corporation, okay? And the corporations are coming. And they're buying up the medical licenses if they can, and flipping over to retail as soon as they can. It's coming. They're knocking on our doors. Okay, so we fine-tune our bylaws to coalesce with your business model. So we think about what we want and then how we're going to run it. But the first thing we did, sorry, I'm going to go back. The 7 principles. We made sure that the language was there, and so you already have the first 7 bylaws. It's what the CCC wants you to adhere to. Yeah, we changed the wording around a little bit, but basically we're making sure that we hit their 7 points in our bylaws. I believe our bylaws we have 17 bylaws. So the first 7 are basically theirs. All right, our bylaws, I'm not going to show you our bylaws. We're actually keeping it as proprietary information at this point. I'd be more than happy to help anyone develop bylaws and discuss the principles behind it and get to the next step. I'll leave a couple cards around and you can take them, but I'm certainly willing to share the process, but actually not our product. That's something that we decided in consensus at this point not to open up. Our membership, by the way, is closed. Co-ops have no limit for members. You can have as many as you want. Remember, you get 100,000 square feet. So make sure your business models fit into that membership idea, okay? The other benefit of the craft cooperative model, which is really brilliant, which is a couple of the members of the CCC really drove home, was that as a craft cooperative, you're allowed to process, manufacture, distribute, and obtain cannabis, okay? So you don't need to get a processor's license if you want to start an extracting business. You need to be possibly a member of a co-op to do that. You want to make edibles, you don't have to go get a processor's license, which is much larger fee, by the way, than the craft cooperative model. Distribution, if you wanted to obtain, so we can bring marijuana in as a craft cooperative, do the process or resell and rebrand through our co-op. Speaking of branding, one of our bylaws was we're a multi-branded co-op, which means we'll all have our own brands. Okay, you'll see my business card and Tim and our logo. The goal, of course, in any business, particularly the cannabis business, after you do some research, you realize that the states that went before us, the companies that got on the ground floor running and got branded right off the bat are still here today. Okay, it's brand knowledge. So our logo, hopefully, will be like every dispensary you go to. So if you're in Worcester, you see our logo. If you're in Provincetown, you see our logo. If you're in Greenfield, you see our logo. Okay, we want to get branded on the ground floor, boom, right off the bat. And that's why our struggles with the town of Truro have been so frustrating, because we want to get to work. And we realize that if we don't get to work soon, we're not going to get branded as quickly as we want to. And there's also very limited investors out here in the cannabis world. So if you were to look at a pie of capital investors, it's such a thin sliver that people want to invest in cannabis. It's so risky without the federal banking being figured out. So 3 or 4 years down the line, those people have already called the license holders to invest with. Okay, you want to be one of the first license holders to get out there, so that the investors, when it becomes public knowledge, they'll be able to give you a phone call. Okay, now we're not looking for a lot of investors necessarily, but that's something to think about. Okay, so now we regress back. Our bylaws, we start. Our primary focus was stewards of the soil. All of us are organic farmers. There's 4 of us in Truro and 1 of us in Wellfleet. That's what we do every day. We farm, and we do it organically. So we decided that was a very important part. So to be a member in our co-op, you have to farm organically. Okay, and I'm actually pushing the boundaries. I'm becoming biodynamic certified, which is a whole other level of certification common in Europe. So it all starts with the soil. Healthy plants start with healthy soil. Gives you healthy, good tasting, terpene, rich, whatever you want to call it, ganja, right? So that was one of our very first, after our 7 principles, boom, that was one of the first ones. Consensus, there it is. Really important that in our case, that we were all in agreement. So every farm has a vote, and not every individual, but every farm has a vote. So Tim and I have to come to consensus, and then we got to join everyone else, and we got to come to consensus with them. Some bylaws that we saw a lot of different bylaws out there. A lot of them, are democratic. Majority vote wins. But we wanted to take it farther than that. Community building. I was hearing Tim talk about this kind of earlier about, for us, community building is a many-pronged thing. And one of it is we're going to be giving back some of our money to local nonprofits. Okay, it's not mandated that we do that by the CCC, but it's what we want to do to our community, and we want to help our community. So that's part of our community building, is to be somewhat philanthropic. The word philanthropy is so big, it seems like millions of dollars, but a certain percentage of all of our gross sales is going to go back towards our community every single year for the existence of our bylaws. One other thing I wanted to say about our co-op is you'll learn, you'll have some choices. We decided to elect a board of directors, which is the 5 of us. And we've also closed our membership at this point. But if the 5 board of directors decides to open membership back up, we will take on members, but they're not necessarily going to be on the board of director until yearly we do a vote, and then everyone will get a vote. And, you'll be on the board of directors for a few years, and then you'll get off, and then someone will vote on. So it won't be an Augie type of situation, but we'll be able to develop our board of directors that way. Community building is going to be a lot of different things. Reaching out to your neighbors. Good neighbors in this business is going to be very important. So we need strong ties. We all have done a lot of community work already in our town, so we already have a lot of good faith to begin with. So that's part of it. Membership diversity. Make it as diverse a group as possible. The CCC really wants to see that. They want to see all these diversity groups met, and we've done that really quite well. Cooperative canopy management. And this is kind of complicated, but you know, you have to come up with fair ways of going through your canopy limits. You have 100,000 square feet. How's it going to get divided up by whoever gets it, right? So, and then a lot of you, I'm not sure if you know, but there's various tiers you go in cultivation, okay? Depending on the amount of square footage you have. So, our cooperative really came up with a novel idea. Well, you know, we're going to set a cap at 50,000 square feet. If one farmer gets to the point where they're going to get to 50,000 square feet, then we have to go back to the board of directors and look at it and say, can they continue? They want another 10,000. Can they take it? Or they have to leave the co-op and start either get their own cultivator license or potentially start another co-op. So it's all kind of controlled that way, and everyone starts off, we all said in the beginning, well, I want 3,000 square feet and I want 2,000. Our smallest is 500. Our wealthy farmer, she doesn't want to be big, she wants to be small, maybe 1,000 someday, you know. So, but she wants the benefit of the co-op, because part of our cooperative canopy management and our whole bylaws in general is part of working together. We share knowledge. Okay, we're not going to like hold back from one of our members. We want all of our members to do well. If all of our members are doing well and we're all selling 85% of our inventory every year, at first it's yearly, and then after that it's every 6 months. So it's in our best interest to make sure that their sales are up and moving and that the product is moving through the distribution chain. It will help all of us that way. So we're going to work collaboratively together. We're going to have no trade secrets. We're actually going to inspect each other's farms and let's just see how everyone's doing and make sure that there's no potential pollution source somewhere that someone's missing, you know. So working together as a team is what it's really all about. The CCC application. Wow, it has been crazy bumpy. We started our application the day we could, which was, when was that? Was that June or May 2nd, I believe?
No, June 1st, I think.
As soon as they allowed us to start our application process, boom, we started. And we spent 9 hours and we got to like question 3. And it was like, there's so much work to be done. And we were just like, whoa. And then I was like, call the lawyer.
Smart lawyer.
Yeah, call the smart lawyer, because it was really an eye-opener. Day 1, after 9 hours, it was a real opener. So the application process is lengthy, it's confusing. Although they've done a pretty good job with it, it's still intense, okay? This is the hardest part, okay? All of our farms have a business model. Tim and I want to grow X amount indoors in a greenhouse, or we want to do an indoor grow-up, we want to do open air cultivation. You know, we got all these different parcels of land, you know, different leases, all this, so it gets confusing. So you got to take all your farm's business plans and then turn it into the co-op business plan. Because the CCC is mostly concerned about our co-op business plan. But they'll see our individual ones, but it's important that, so this step here has been one of the most difficult ones to figure out. Know the regulations. I can't say that enough to everybody. When you're filling out the forms, use their language. Twist the words around a little bit, but answer their questions with their own words. And you've covered your tracks, right? So our farmer Drake has been really exceptional at this, taking the CCC's language and switching it into her own. Measure twice, cut once. I don't know how many carpenters are out here, but just make sure you've done your process right before you click submit, right? Because you don't want to have to go back. So make sure you measure twice and you really do a good job with before you hit the submit button. It's all done on through a portal. It's all done online. It's relatively easy to get set up. Consult your lawyer. Just keep talking to your lawyer. Okay, they're not just there to help you with the town. They're there to help you through the whole process. Public outreach meetings. We've had one. We've actually had two. One official public outreach meeting and an earlier one just to educate people. And we're about to have a third, because in our last planning board meeting we realized that no one has a clue in this town what we're talking about. Okay, so we have another meeting coming up next week. You'll be able to get it on Facebook. I'm sure we'll put it on the video, but You have to do it. It needs to be done, but when you're doing it, make sure you hit all the points that they say. They have a document, guidelines for your public outreach meeting. Well, make sure you hit everything, because you don't want to have to go back later and be like, sorry, CCC, we missed something, but you go back and do the whole thing again. It's not, the public outreach is stressful. I found it stressful, and I've been public speaking for a long time, and I found it to be pretty intense when all the board of selectmen are there, and the lawyers and everyone, and the mad second homers. You know, we have a big problem. It's called not in my backyard in Truro. Okay, we voted for yes, right, for question 4, but remember in Truro, at least I don't know about your towns, but in Truro, the second home people don't get to vote at town meeting. Okay, so you're taking 300, 450 people from the town of Truro. Of course, those people are going to vote yes for pot. They all smoke pot, right? So that's easy. But the second homers actually have a really strong influence in our town. The Non-Resident Taxpayers Association is really strong, and they have all the board of selectmen were once Non-Resident Taxpayers Association, except for one, Mike Roderick, who's a local. Then you have on the board of selectmen, all of them were once part of the Non-Resident Taxpayers Association, except for one, Jan Worthington. Okay, and you know, so be prepared. There's a lot of movement and a lot of strength that they have. That's all behind the doors. You know, so really be ready for your public outreach meeting. Follow their guidelines. Try not to get distracted by all the hecklers and the misinformation and the whole reefer madness thing. You know, post community agreement. Don't give them more than they deserve. I mean, we're all reading the newspapers. We all know what's happening. Towns are, literally exploiting and extorting money certainly out of the medical people. Those guys got really extorted. Okay, all the medical dispensaries, they gave so much, and now these towns are wanting it. You know, when Tim and I went to the town of Brewster and said we want to have a cultivation operation here in Brewster, they were ready to go. They have a process. You've got to sit down in front of everyone important from the town and start this process. And the very first thing they say is, we're not even going to engage in a post-community agreement with you until you give us $5,000. And that was KP Law's decision. So we've been fighting that, because then Truro, KP Law, and others said the same thing to us when we went to Truro. Well, we're not even going to talk to you until you give us $5,000. So now, and we've filed complaints with the CCC, we haven't heard back from them, we've filed like 6 complaints, they haven't answered one of our emails. Just don't give them more than they deserve. 3% of your gross, 5 years, that's all they get. And they have to account for it. If they say they need a new police car, and a new police officer because of the security, they've got to prove it. They have to have documented proof, in my mind, of how they're going to use that vehicle, how it's necessary. They have to come up with statistics, and they can't do it because the statistics don't exist. Okay? They just can't go up.
Don't forget, even if they prove it, they can't go over 3%.
They can't go over 3%.
Not go over 3%.
They can never go over 3%. They can't. They can't go over 3%, and they can't do it for more than 5 years. So guess what? When you're doing your business plan, you budget 3% for first 5 years of your gross. Just put it in there. Okay? Assume the worst. Okay? But hopefully, when we put in, we put in a host community agreement with our town, and we put in 1% of our net. That's what our lawyer did. He's very good that way. Start the hiring process. Go shoot low. 1% of net is a huge difference of 1% of gross. So, and the Craft Cooperative license, salaries are going to be written off. And the retail business, what is it? 208 or 218, the federal thing that you're going to go through. What is it? 280. That's it. 280. You're bumming if you're in the retail business. Okay, but the Craft Cooperative, we get to write off our salaries. Okay, so that's going to be huge for your net and your gross when you grow in salaries. All right, stay the course. Right, you got to just keep staying the course. Okay, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. The towns have lied to us. They're coming from all angles. I have a gag order on me now. I'm not allowed to talk to any more newspaper people or anything, because I made a big FU, went to Cape Cod Times, and My lawyer was like, what are you doing? So I pissed a lot of people off when I said that. So currently I'm only allowed to speak to folks like you. I'm not allowed to talk to anyone in the town and my friend Boz is with me, so I'm not alone. We both have gag orders. I'm like totally frustrated up to here. I've been lied to so many times that not a lawyer has to handle everything. So I can't really. I get so angry. So dreams can become reality. That's the first time I've ever put a photograph like that in the public in my entire life, and I'm going to take it off before it goes on the internet. So before it goes on the internet, you guys, we're going to get rid of this file, okay? But yeah, you know, I won't say where it is, but I know it's close to home. That's for sure. So, you know, dream big. This is your one shot, guys. Like, we're getting this industry. We got like a couple years to be in the ground floor. It's being slowly rolled out, so it actually gives us a little more time to get our shit together. You know, unfortunately, the towns are forcing us to take it slow, but get your dream, get your vision, find some people to work with, go for it. Remember, this license, not just growing, processing, manufacturing, and obtaining. That's a huge little you know, black writing in there that they added.
Do you know the price of the license?
I know that like where we're coming in, it's done by the tiers, but I can't remember them offhand, but I know that where Tim and I are going to go in, we're going to be paying about $675 a year for our license.
That's the tier, I know what we're talking
Well, there's lots of, yeah, but I'm saying for our square footage of the tier. Okay, so we're going into tier 3 most likely. Okay, so whatever it is, we're going to be the largest. And we're going to be paying by percentage. Our bylaws set it up so whoever has the biggest percentage of the canopy will be paying that same percentage kind of through. So our application fee percentage will be higher than someone else's. Our license fee will be higher than someone else's. So I think it was like 100 and something for the license fee for our portion, and like 675, something like that for our. I'd have to go through my books, but. It's a lot less than the 15,000 or 30,000 they were talking about in the beginning. You know, and when they first talked about these licenses, we all thought we were going to be in it for 30 grand a year. You know, that's why the benefit of this cooperative license is it's to get people who aren't super rich. You know, if you have a greenhouse, if you have a green thumb, you know, give it a try. You know, start at tier 1. You know, it takes a year to get to the next tier. But you got to prove that you've sold 85% of your inventory. Otherwise, they're not going to let you go. And if you don't sell 85% of your inventory, they relegate you back. That's here.
One more question.
Go ahead.
So we get the license to grow based on the tier, correct? How do you get the license to sell it?
Automatically, if you obtain a Cannabis Craft Cooperative license from the state, you will be allowed to sell to any licensed facility in the state. Eventually, even medical. When the Department of Public Health and the CCC, when the CCC takes over the Department of Public Health, who's running the medical, at that point, we'll be able to sell to the medical dispensaries as well. But a licensed facility is a retail licensed facility, a processor, a medical testing facility. Part of our back as many slides, our community outreach stuff and our community work is a lot of us are very dedicated towards medical research for cannabis. So being able to get supplies, different phenotypes, different genetics to the testing facilities, to the medical testing facilities. You know, now that they can get their own license, we can sell to them. That's one of the licenses that the CCC opened up, was a medical testing facility.
No retail sales.
No retail sales,
Only
yeah.
wholesale from a cooperative.
Yeah.
That's the one single restriction.
Yeah. So when you go in and when you get your license, you're going to tell the CCC, I want to grow 10,000 square feet, right? So they're going to boom, you're in tier 2. Right. But you have to sell 85% of your 10,000 square feet after year 1, right? And then every 6 months after that, you have to make sure that 85% of your inventory is
So
gone.
you would have to build these relationships with existing dispensaries.
Yeah, so any dispensary owners in this room here, this is a great place. It has been for me to meet extractors and other people, potential people who want to get into the business in other areas. We all have to work together.
And the future is really going to be about the new licenses that they'll be distributing next year with social consumption, social use license, and delivery. Because the thing that a craft cooperative will have above a cultivator is they can use the word local. We're your local people, we're selling it to you, and those people would then be able to sell it also to the customer with a local tag. We on Cape Cod obviously have so many visitors from around the world. They want to buy local, they want to support local. So, and this goes back to the branding that we had talked about. It's our opportunity to really get our friends who are going to be those retailers to really pick up our product and make sure that they reinforce this. Because if anything, the small business person is the one who keeps that money cycling through the community a lot faster and a lot longer than any big business, which sucks it out at some point.
Our business model at year 5 has 12 employees year-round working at $20 an hour minimum to start, you know. And as an employee-owned company, we're talking about health benefits, you know, something that can bring families back to churro. That's like what everyone wants. All these board of selectmen, all these people, that's what they're trying to do. That's the talk. And here we are giving them an opportunity to bring jobs back, not just with our farm, but the thing we came up with, everyone's business model at year 3 or 5, it was 19 jobs are created, you know, from all of that. So we need to remind them whenever we can that the economic, you know, not just the 3% for 5 years, or if you're a retail business, they're going to get 3% of everything from you. But, you know, we need to be able to remind them that there's more to it than just that host community agreement, that it's bringing jobs and people back to work.
Very important about the community host agreement. You guys sent an email, you didn't get a response. Today's the final day to give your response for the community host agreement for the public documents. So everybody in here, I'm not sure what the time was that it was today, but you can go on the Cannabis Control Commission website. It's under public documents, and it's the first document there, community host agreement draft, and it'll tell you, okay, email this and give your public comment about it. So obviously what you want to do is say, it sucks, we shouldn't have to, or whatever.
Or just let towns know that they can't just manipulate us, you know, and they be unreasonable.
Right, more they hear from us.
Yeah, they need, the CCC is, you know, made it difficult with, you know, with the host community agreements. They're just trying to back off and say it's the town and your guy's problem, right? Well, really, it's got to be looked at. I mean, if the town is going to inhibit you from going into business, then it's the CCC's problem as well. And yes, it's going to be a battle in court, unfortunately.
There's a meeting tomorrow with the commission. I'm not sure, you know, who's involved with it. I am involved with it. The topic that we're talking about is the community host agreements, more so in regards to equity applicants, because these big companies are coming in and flashing their dollars, and equity applicants don't necessarily, or small businesses like ours, can't play. And so we're talking about kind of, you know, are there ways to require new regulations on municipalities to allocate a certain number of their licenses and permits, or so they are talking about it.
Yeah, but that talk has just started.
Oh yeah, it's
they could have started months ago, but it's just starting now.
Yeah.
The CCC, in my opinion, has done a good job.
I agree.
I'm not against. I think they've done a fine job, and it, you know, I didn't expect them to roll it out fast, anyways. But you know, I mean, I'm sure some people are ready to find their dispensary right now, but you know, stay the course. It's going to be okay.
Dave, just to clarify, so the host community agreement that you're talking about, is that the talk that I've heard about the state is looking at the abuses?
Yes.
Underway now, and they're
Correct.
taking comments?
And they're taking public comments, and
Tonight.
that can be whatever it is you feel about the community host agreement.
I wasn't sure. I
It's
knew
tonight, but I'm not
that
sure what
was
the timing
being
was.
examined.
I am afraid it might have been 5:30 as the cutoff. I'm afraid that might have been it, but
I hope they would.
it's been they've been accepting comments for a week or two, right? It wasn't
Only
super
a
long.
week, it was really
Yeah, I
short.
didn't realize there was a comment process, but I
Yeah.
assumed. Okay.
Yeah,
That's the
I'm
thing.
sure.
One of the thing about the you know, the CCC's website is usable, and like you just keep going to the public documents thing, because like everything they do, as soon as it gets like formalized, it's a document. So you need to study all those documents, because all the little stuff is in there. You know, in the regs there's a lot, but everything's in those documents too. So it's kind of like, let's get carried forward and how we're going to do it. You know? Any more questions?
I just want to use the perfect word on extortion. Like,
Yeah, well, that's what they're doing. Yeah, for sure. You know, particularly with the medical things. I mean, you know, $100 million or whatever. You know, it's crazy. All right. So I'm sorry I took up a lot of
Great job.
That's
That's great.
Rick, give us a little update on Orleans. Might as well go, you know, east to west, right?
Here, this is being, Julian, this is being recorded, so we know.
Here, why don't you sit there and you can do your video.
Hello all. I'm Rick Francolini from Orleans, and Dave, Tim, for what my word is worth, those guys are so on point. I can't speak to the specifics of developing a cooperative, but that first series of slides and bullet points, every meeting, every watch your back, everything, you know, we're living that in Orleans. And the quick headlines for our town is as follows. A few months ago, we beat a proposed ban, so that was a huge step in the right direction. And since then, advocates have attended every planning board meeting. Every time cannabis was on an agenda, we've been there. And you know, where we stand right now actually is relatively speaking encouraging, but it's not done till it's done. And I clearly understand that. But where we are now is that the folks that have been the most engaged have been advocates. We haven't heard a lot from those who are in opposition. We know they still exist, but the ones who have been engaged and influencing the planning board and showing up at our most recent hearing, which had about 50 attendees last Tuesday, I say 95% of them were speaking intelligently and responsibly about how to bring a good regulated industry to Orleans. Where we stand right now as a town is that I think it's safe to say that we are moving in a reasonably good direction as far as allowing all of the different licenses potentially, minimizing caps, if any, potentially. Retail numbers are still up for debate, but the Board of Selectmen recently sent word to the Planning Board with regards to some of their preferences, which are a little bit more liberal than the Planning Board originally was leaning towards. We're going to have another hearing next Tuesday evening because they haven't closed it out yet. And I would say the biggest yellow flag that exists in our town right now is that they are going to split this zoning bylaw into two components. Component one is going to be all of the licenses in general and caps and where they can be done and whether there's caps or not, etc. But then they've taken off one specific component and they've peeled it off, and it's going to be put out to town meeting separately. And I do understand why at this point, although I resisted it originally, that is going to be the small-scale cultivation in residential districts. Okay? For the individual who wants to have a Tier 1 micro-business or be part of a cooperative and wants to, you know, cultivate up to 5,000 square feet on their acre of property that they own in a residential neighborhood, that's something that's going to have to be voted on and approved separately from everything else. And that's because there's so much concern and so much unpredictability from the leaders in town as to what might happen to that component. You know, they don't want that to undermine the bigger piece of the puzzle. So right now, you know, what I am encouraging those who I communicate with and what I'm going to be doing via an email blast within the next day or two is just, you know, we need to bring the best, most creative ideas that we can to the hearing on next Tuesday the 24th as it relates to small-scale cultivation. You know, how can we have sensitivity to abutters and still responsibly enable farmers who want to cultivate to cultivate? You know, what does security look like? We know it's regulated by the CCC. What are the implications to the backyards? You know, what does fencing look like? What does screening look like? What does setbacks look like? Is it a lot coverage formula? Is it some other formula? How big do you have to be viable? All conversations I've had to some degree with Dave. So, you know, I did speak with Ed D'Souza, who mentioned you. Ed has said he is going to come to that meeting next Tuesday evening. Hopefully he still is. If not, I'll play this video for him to remind him. But Ed is someone who is cultivating off-Cape or in the process of a Tier 1, 5,000 square foot organic cultivator, and he's very charismatic, very passionate. And since Dave's got the gag order going on right now, he's done a lot of the heavy lifting already in Truro. It's nice to bring somebody else into the mix, and hopefully that individual will help educate our decision makers who have to decide what they're going to put forth at town meeting. So those are the headlines. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's really where we stand right now.
Is that Big Ed?
Yeah, but
Big Ed River Run? Is that the same Ed?
Big Ed at D'Souza,
Yeah.
River Run, yeah. I met him at a previous meeting a couple times ago, and I called him when we were originally hoping to be one bylaw, one holistic solution that the town could get behind. But the good news is that we started making progress on other things that were not looking good, like the other licenses and caps and things of that sort. So the fact that those things are moving in a decent direction right now and are probably going to get an endorsement from both the planning board and the select board and FinCom and things like that, having that move forward and peeling off the other component and keeping it separate, I respect the decision, but we just have to come up with some really good ideas as to how we can at least get this moving in the right direction.
We know a smart lawyer.
Well, it's funny you say that. Personally, I have no interest in the business because I'm done working and I'm pleased to be done working. But I would like so much for that business to be able to thrive for those who are interested on the Cape and in Orleans in particular. So certainly I'm advocating for it on behalf of others. But since I'm not ready to hire a lawyer to get it done, what we don't have in Orleans yet is we don't have a community of farmers as you do, who have stepped up and who are leading the charge. I believe they probably exist. I think a lot of them are kind of on the down low right now, waiting to see what happens for whatever reason. But we don't have those high-profile advocates as Truro does and High Dunes. And certainly I applaud your efforts and all of the heavy lifting you've done and everything you've taught me so far.
I'm going to send you our latest version of the bylaws.
Yes, you
Very
should see
creative
it.
ideas.
And
You saw them?
No, I've seen yours.
Yeah.
I'm
We'll
going to
send
send
you
you
ours.
ours,
We
which
just-
just finishing up in about an hour or so ago.
Then you deserve a huge thanks if you're not even going to be part of this industry and you're up there advocating and fighting for it. Thank you.
If I'm going to convince my wife to live in Orleans year-round, we got to be a forward-thinking, visionary community with young people. Otherwise, I might
Hey,
have
we're
to go
going to
south.
use that line.
Otherwise, I have to go south for 4 or 5 months. So we're trying to stay in front of it. And certainly, I also feel as though there's a really underrepresented segment of the Orleans community that, until now has not been very mobilized, has been a bit disenfranchised, and frankly is distracted, working multiple jobs, raising young kids, and showing up to public hearings and in town meetings is not something that they've always done in the past. But recently they have. But we do have that, second homeowner, not in my backyard sort of thing that we have to be sensitive to, and striking that balance is what we need to figure out now. And that's going to start again on Tuesday evening, the 24th. Question?
No, I was stretching.
That was stretching. Anything else? That's Orleans. Thank you. Orleans is a good one to follow because I feel like the pro and anti sides are both rolling out the picture perfectly. So it's good block, a lot of pressure, it's blocks of man, etc. I guess I'll wrap up the update so we can close with something less politically oriented. But so Barnstable is where I've been focusing, where Spencer and I have been focusing, where a lot of people have been focusing. Thank you to those people who continue to come out. And we, if you were at the last town meeting, we far, outweighed the opponents there. So that was really good to see. And the fact that we just continuously show up every time, if not building strength every time, certainly not coming shy. And I think that's we're outlasting them, right? So we'll see how that goes. There was basically at last town meeting a little bit of strategery from both sides. So basically, it's 50-50 split. The 13 councilors are split in half. The
It's the most contentious issue they've had since like water development, which on the Cape is just huge. So basically, they both were supposed to withdraw their last meeting, but for some reason, the ban prohibition has decided at the last minute to continue it. Maybe they can, continue to hold leverage, but regardless, this meeting on Thursday, joint workshop with Planning Board and Town Council, is intended to redraft some type of compromise, and it will. What we need to fight against is the foundation of that compromise being a ban that's amended to allow other things. I would say it's flip that around, and it's allowing everything except maybe something else. So we would propose a moratorium, extend that moratorium on retail, because that's really what's going to bring people to the table. It has to come off the table just temporarily. We have to educate people, especially the councilors who are in favor of this industry, that a ban of any sort is a huge nail in the coffin of the industry for the Cape, right? So, you can't say, yeah, come bring all your business, So right now they're looking at, we like the idea of cultivation. We're accepting cultivation now. We've chiseled away. They wanted to ban everything, then it got, testing involved, research involved, now cultivation's in. And Jim Crocker, VP, went on, it was Pat's show, right? Pat Dismaris show on Sunday, and brought that, to the table, the fact that they're going to allow cultivation. Great, we're making progress, but, as far as like the model on the Cape, that's very cost prohibitive, traditional cultivation, right? The price per square foot is difficult here. That's why, it's such a great place for craft cooperatives. But again, leaving craft cooperatives off the table. Leaving micro businesses off the table. So I think that this is the opportunity to just lean in. They're already susceptible to the fact that there's non-consumer facing businesses here. They need even the pro side just today. What's a micro business? These are people who are allies pushing this forward, and they do not know how to, they don't understand themselves as micro businesses. So let alone are they going to be able to articulate it to the council. So this workshop is really expected to be big. Expect the language to get, really hammered out. And that foundation of, are we talking about a ban that with some exceptions to allow other things, which might be, that might be the way they try to structure it. I would say that needs to be a moratorium. That's the way it's going. That needs the foundation, that's a moratorium. But I would rather see some type of, allowing all the businesses pro zoning that's then amended with a moratorium on retail. Sure, question?
What is a moratorium?
Okay, so that is the temporary action. So, you hear them say, well, let's just wait and see. Why would we want to go first? Well, first, that's the first mover advantage. That's the big opportunity. So you don't want to, forego that. But yeah, they just, sorry, what's the question?
What is a moratorium?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the temporary action. God, I got to really say
temporary action.
Yeah, so that's the one that, so basically the AG's with upholding, you can extend to June 30th next year. It was supposed to be, they couldn't do it past the end of this year, so they have a moratorium in place, right? So this is a tool they've accepted, they're comfortable with. So it's basically an extension of their current situation with retail. It gives you the wait and see. That gives you the opportunity for all the political maneuvering, but most importantly, allow the other industry categories to come in, dip your toe in the water. That's your wait and see. Start collecting some of this revenue. And start seeing that this is big business with a supply chain, and it's the least risky vice. Put it in that category. Alcohol taking all this risk, and they don't get 3% gross. They don't get any direct taxes, in that regard off income. So critical Thursday, and then because why they want that workshop is so that they can get a planning board's official stance, vote, recommendations, and not go back through planning with this new compromise. Next Thursday, the 16th, they will basically expect them to vote on that. That's what they want to do. Maybe they do another meeting after, continue in another meeting, but that's what this, why they slid that workshop in. They knew they were both going to fail. You can't zone because they need 2/3 to pass. So you're 50-50 against. These come to the table, and people are, even the pro side expending a lot of, political capital. So even them, who we've been focusing on reaching the opponents, just even give them a call and just say thank you for continuing. Don't let them give up because they're getting hammered. Britt Biedermetter is getting ostracized from the council. Period. Fact. I mean, that's what's happening to her. She's still 100% in, but how much is she going to fight? Sorry.
Can you just give me the location and the time for that?
367 Main Street, Town Hall in Hyannis.
Okay.
It'll be
South Street. Okay.
Oh, okay, better. That is, yeah. I waste minutes every time.
What was the time? The meeting, the workshop?
Much easier to get the parking there. What's that?
What time is the workshop?
It starts at 7, I believe.
Awesome, thank you.
But if you follow regular Cape Cod, you'll have all the
Try to put all the
Who's
dates
going to be
in.
speaking? Is it going to be pro and con?
Oh, so, I mean, this is a workshop with planning board, right? So it's a public meeting, expect front-end public comment, how it would be different from last meeting, and these other, where they bring up the article is where there's public comment on the article, right? You wait, the article comes up, they want to hear everybody speak to that article. If they allow public comment on Thursday, which, they should, but they could always decide not to. Doubt that's going to happen, being the most contentious issue that they've experienced. So I think they're going to put public comment at least in the front end, right? And like we're being told, it's going to be a big night. Got to bring as many people as possible.
I wanted to mention that if you haven't been there before, it's near the Kennedy Library. There are 2 other 367 Main Streets in that area. So if you go near the wharf where the steamship is and the Kennedy Library, it's all right downtown.
I've tried to find a conspiracy theory there, but they're not trying to throw me off every time I try to go there.
It says the normal school, right? Is that what it says, the normal school?
Oh, I don't know.
So if you look up at the correct text.
Oh, really?
The normal school.
So yeah, we just, moratorium on retail, I think we just need to, that is the olive branch that needs to be given in this scenario, take fear off the table so you can make a logical decision, and it's about the diverse categories of business here. And then unfortunately, what is cool about Massachusetts, I mean, this is actually going to be the first, model that's really, the regs are written really well to favor small business at a state level, it's there for us to succeed, but we need to get through this FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt, and cut through that and just get the categories of business that will allow small business to move forward and the brands, the first mover advantage on the brands. Talked to one of those brands out of California recently. They make one product, a vape cartridge, $200 million a year from in-state sales and $80 million a year out-of-state licensing. And as you can imagine, as states come online, that licensing chunk gets huge. What do you bring? I mean, that's talking like multiple Cape Cod chips, industry back to the Cape in a big way. I mean, we've talked to major property holders over there in Barnstable that are in that zone that they don't care about, that they could bring online all the square footage I know that this room would want in that area. And fortunately, they're not willing to speak up now, but they're very interested in talking afterwards. So, I mean, the property's there, that's why it's the business hub of the Cape, And just a little micro update, about how I try to approach my own precinct 10, Marston's Mill, because for some reason, though we voted for question 4, my counselor feels that it's obligation to push sober mindfulness on all the constituents, and he would like to cut out, all alcohol and cannabis. So, he's a reasonable guy otherwise, but anyway, so I just try to start doing good in the community. So this is right in the heart. This is actually where I live now. I moved there. It's actually, unfortunately, where Sean Gannon was shot. So it was like kind of a neighborhood that got kind of, in a funk. So they have this park. Swung in there. They said, oh, they needed a playground. Went to school with a guy, who owns, his dad founded Cedar Works in Maine. Give him a call. What he did for DCR back in, last year was they raised $11 grand. They got him a $40,000 playset. So I brought that to the community. They loved it. AJ Spence and I, put together $5 grand to get him halfway there, and we were raising money up at the DeWitt Arts Center, and me and my son were in there blowing minds, and counselors walked in, chief of police walk in, I get to engage him about cannabis, apologize for swearing, I have to do that a lot. The chief of police said, the first time I met him was at like the barbecue announcing this donation. I go get the handshake, and he's like, oh yeah, thanks a lot. My daughter watched that, really enjoyed that. But yeah, these are the tactics, I try to employ just to, get into the immediate community where I'm a voter.
Question for you and the room. Has anyone heard or have any comments about this alternative, safe and secure rental grow facility bill that they've changed for residents who would like to grow, but they don't have the capacity to grow at home, so they're allowed to do their 6 count or their 12 count in a safe and secure rental facility. It was just introduced July 23rd, I believe. And they're actually amending the wording so that it's you can either grow in your private residence or a safe and secure rental facility. That to me sounds huge.
Yeah.
Especially if we're really trying to make sure that people can grow locally, grow their own. Even from a business perspective, if you have, I don't know if a license has to be required for that particular storage facility. I'm still trying to learn more about it. Has anyone heard about this?
No, that's great though.
It's, bill is H4379, Alternative Safe and Secure Rental Grow Facility. A monitored secure facility with secure, individually air sealed and segregated personal plant grow spaces dedicated to each tenant. So you would be able to do a primary residence or alternative safe and secure grow facility. Huge.
That is huge.
I haven't heard much about it.
So is it still a maximum of 12 plants?
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, you could have a, you could get an all metal building and section it off and allow people to come in.
Yeah.
Storage
We had that in Rhode Island for a while.
Yeah.
And they eliminated that quickly. Just exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They eliminated it because it was, people were getting together and just growing massive amounts. And then selling it black market.
Yeah, that's
There's no plan behind it.
Yeah, it's got to be done right. But actually, I'm glad to hear that, because that's a big reason my why. That's what I see. Like the WeWork of cannabis, basically, a space that drives innovation, has the right connections, and can just take people and build the businesses. So yeah, I mean, like that's actually the conversation when I alluded to conversations with responsible property holders. That would be what the property I would condition. That's exactly what it should do.
Yeah, especially if you're into
product and cultivation.
Education. I mean, if you're in an educational school, I know that there's one local school that I think is no longer in business. But that's another way for them to bring in some income, is to have an educational center where you're teaching people how to grow. They have their own space, they can maintain their own line.
What was that bill number again? HR what?
H4379.
And has it been passed or has it just been
It's been
introduced?
introduced. Daniel Cahill, State Rep Daniel Cahill.
4379.
July 23rd.
Yeah, I'd say genuinely that there's probably a degree of interpretation in the current regulations that would allow for that like, what is the true intention between co-location? Co-location around attached to micro businesses, and is the intention that you want to make micro businesses out there? But anyway, yeah, if you have any questions about Barnstable, and just Thursday, the next 2 Thursdays are critical. All the decisions are get made prior to the meeting. That's why I always harp on calls, emails, please. Like, they walk in there like they're going on TV, because they are. They get broadcast everywhere. These people try to get reelected. They do make money from this position, right? It's a paid position. So I mean, they're in it to win it, and they're coming to the script most likely. Very hard to sway them. Then you can really sway them. I mean, they don't get many calls. Like when you're talking normal issues, 2 or 3 calls, and they're going to take that as a poll. Like, they're going to get fired if they don't follow the direction of those. So just as much as you can do for that, direct one-on-one communication, but definitely need to show up. 76 square miles of this southern Cape.
Just to make it easier for everybody, he posted a link on that too without town councilors. I would just suggest adding to
Oh, yeah.
the ones that are prohibitive, so we can maybe call them more. But you already posted on that, so it's just to make it easier for us.
Yeah,
We already have their
totally.
phone numbers.
You're right. I have it in the image above, but I never brought that down. Just made it
I actually recommended that in one of my little videos that I was doing, just for like the news that was happening the past month. I made sure I told everybody that. But specifically, like I said, I think you should cite the ones we should definitely talk to that are prohibitive, more than the others, obviously, right? Because it's 5 for and 5 against, so don't we want to talk to the ones that are against it more and let them know our opinion, so.
I can argue
So
that
who's
it's just,
coming?
I
Yeah,
can argue
just
it's just
support.
important to go
Okay,
for
then both,
the
they
pros.
call every single one.
I was almost
Yeah.
gonna say-
And the-
I was almost
and
gonna
the
say the
13
pros,
Yeah,
maybe more.
when they're
They
at the
need-
meeting and they
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
heard
Go
the
for it,
general,
go
they
for
can
it.
be more likely swayed to off of where
Can
they're
we do a group
standing.
email or is
These
that
are the
not?
people, these are the underdogs getting beat up, you know, like they need a shot in the arm, hey, great job. You know, when people, like if you're in Centerville precinct, that's Britt Biedenbeckers, when people ask me what they can do there, you know, I say call Britt. You know, just let her know, thank you, you know, continuing to fight, because yeah, it's coming our way. Like, we've not moved, that's continued to move this way, right? So, like, let's keep that momentum and, you know, encourage those people who've been pulling it. It's all logical, which is great.
Just real quick, I want to thank Beth. Just wanted to hand these out. I put a personal invitation out. We're running a co-event
Oh, yeah.
in October 25th on the business side. So I'm going to use my business magazine to do an educational take at this. And I've personally invited every member of the Barnstable Town Council and the Planning Board to come to this event as my guest, no charge. All right, so that supposedly is going to be brought on Thursday night. That's what one of the selectmen told me. So that's that. We're going to run another event in December on the employer aspect of the marijuana business. We've got a team of lawyers coming in to talk about what businesses need to start doing to change their employee manuals and things like that. I also invited the Barnstable Town Council and the Planning Board to come to that event as my personal guest. Some of you in this room have already been contacted by one of my writers, Doug Carlson,
Oh, yeah,
for the September story. I'll have magazines for everybody on that. And then starting in my October issue of the magazine, I'm going to be running I'm going to call it Cannabis story about the business side of it. I will have a column in every single issue of the magazine so that we can at least educate people about what this business is, what do they do, who's behind the business, things like that. So those are just a couple of things that I'm doing personally.
Thank you.
Behind the scenes.
We need a few more up here.
I'm assuming he's
I don't have any, it's on my website. Go to the website, everything's out there. Huh?
Who are you again? He was one.
I own Cape and Plymouth Business Magazine.
Really appreciate that, yeah, educating the counselors, especially with the business opportunity, right? That's the business, the
That's the
industry.
take right there.
It's beyond, it's not just a pot shop like Cape Cod Times we covered in 2 years. It's beyond the pot shop. Like, come on, it's a whole industry, and that's actually, thank you, Tim, for the warm intro. We had a great meeting with Wendy Northcross of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce.
Wendy's doing my opening comments. I've already
Yeah, which
talked
is
to
great,
her.
so.
Right.
She now basically sees it as, okay, if you're trying to ban the industry, the Chamber of Commerce is obligated to comment on that and advise against any type of action that would somehow, you know, affect an entire industry, right? You know, you want to make selections on certain things, that's your prerogative, but when you start prohibiting the growth of an industry, that's the Chamber of Commerce responsibility. So we met with her last Thursday, and she was trying to put together an emergency exec board so they can put together a statement and bring it to these next, you know, critical meetings. So I mean, I think that is a big win, and I'm very excited about that. And that's what I can, you know, everything we can do. I mean, it's, you know, we gotta lean in.
She called me when she found out we were doing this.
Nice.
And And I specifically asked her, would you like to do opening comments? And she said, I'd be honored. And she was going to put some money on the line for sponsorship. So I don't know what she's going to say. I'm not going to ask her ahead of time. I have a very good relationship with her. She really likes what the events are going to be, so at least we've got her involved.
She's definitely thinking about it right, and they already have the right framework there. They already have commerce color-coded. They've got the blue commerce, right, for Cape, right? Blue, all the water. And the green commerce, it's your whole, you just add those pages right into the, 100-year strategic growth plan. But part of that growth plan in the business diversity, and if you've been paying attention to what's been happening, with CBD at federal level, state level, so, we thought have Eric Hunter come back in and do a little bit more of a deep dive into Cape Cod hemp and the opportunities that lie beyond THC.
So, as Adam mentioned, my name is Eric Hunter, and I have a startup called Cape Cod Hemp, which consists of a dozen plants and a gas chromatograph. So, I've been interested in CBD because at the present time, the CBD is the highest revenue that you can get from a hemp plant. There, of course, are other uses for hemp, including food, fiber, fuel, horse bedding, hempcrete, which is a type of concrete, but for today we'll stick with CBD because that's the hot growth sector right now. Okay, so what is CBD? CBD is cannabidiol, and I've put cannabidiol next to THC to give you some idea of how they differ. With cannabidiol, you have an OH group here, whereas with THC, you have an O. With CBD, you have a double bond here and a single bond here. And because of that, I'm sure it's more complicated than I understand, you have something that is non-psychoactive versus something that is psychoactive. They both have medical uses. With CBD, the primary uses right now are for pain relief, anxiety relief, and it's also FDA approved for the treatment of certain types of epilepsy, known as Dravet syndrome, one of those. In 2015, total sales in the United States were around 202 million, and there are different projections. I've seen as high as 3 billion and as low as 1.5 billion, but some of the more reputable sources are projecting growth of 2.1 billion by 2020 nationwide. And I picked this company as a case study. This is in Canada. And Canada does allow medical marijuana, and they also have allowed hemp production since about 1998. And the Alliance Growers Corporation is planning this facility, and so they're doing tissue culture, which is where you take a very small amount of plant material and then you grow it in agar type material. And they're growing a strain with 10% CBD, which is on the low side compared to some of the cultivars that are available. They have an outdoor field of 20 acres, and they're projecting 200,000 plants yielding 100,000 kilos of CBD flower, which a total yield of 3,000 kilos of 99% CBD isolate. And they're projecting $20,000 per kilo, which would yield $60 million in gross revenue. Their costs range from $20 million to $30 million. Now they're going to go big. They're going to have this huge building and this big facility, and you figure, well, at $20,000 per kilo, you can't possibly go wrong, right? Slam dunk. Okay. Okay, so if you Google isolate, you'll see here that we're not talking about $20,000. We're talking about market price is $7,800 or $7,500 a kilo, and there are dozens and dozens of suppliers that come up and Google this. So this is not an anomaly. And using the higher of the two prices, this 3,000 kilogram only yields 23 million. You remember from the last slide that their costs were projected to be between 20 and 30 million. So you're either going to make 3 million or you're going to lose 7. So I wouldn't suggest that anyone go huge on this and expect big revenue, because a lot of people are in the game already and the price is dropping. Having said that, there's still money to be made. Shell Farms is another example, a much more modest facility that grew from the ground up as a result of the legalization of hemp in Kentucky, thanks to their Secretary of Agriculture, which really spearheaded the effort and fought the DEA, who tried to shut it down at every turn. In this case, they're doing 40 acres planted. Their yield is half a pound per plant. Instead of doing tissue culture, they're doing typical cloning like you would do in marijuana, where you cut off part of the plant and then you put it in rock wool or soil or gel to grow it. And then they're moving the plants outdoors. You see here they have a semi-automated planting system here, which greatly reduces the labor and a lot easier on your back than planting all by hand. Their projected yield from last year, I don't have the numbers, the final numbers for last year or this year, but 3,000 pounds per acre is what they're expecting to get. And then they have another company that processes it for them. So I see this as a much more sustainable model than going for a $30 million facility and huge building that may not be economic. All right, so moving on from that, I want to share my experiences with gas chromatograph, which I bought for potency testing. And this particular unit is made by a company in California. They call it the Model 420 gas chromatograph. Number, that's intentional. It's a $5,000 unit, which competes with other units costing $10,000 to $50,000. To give you some idea of how it works, it's a very simple principle where you dissolve the plant material in a solvent, you inject the solvent into a tube. This tube is found inside an oven, which heats it to approximately 170 degrees Celsius. That liquid becomes a gas. The gas travels through the tube and into the detector. And the detector then registers that signal as a voltage spike, which then is read on your computer. So it's basically like an alcohol still, except that this tube is coated with a special kind of plastic, which has an affinity for CBD and THC and other types of chemicals. So you see here the instructions they provided with the unit say just take some fresh cannabis material, mix it with 40 milliliters of alcohol, and inject it into the machine and you'll get proper results. Well, I followed the instructions and I was getting very low results, maybe 2 or 3% for cannabis that I expected to be 15 or 16%. And so I wondered what was wrong. I called them up and they said, well, I'm not really sure, but why don't you try decarboxylating this material before you extract it and see what kind of results you get. And I tried several different schemes to decarboxylate it based on things that I read on the internet, and everybody had a different opinion as to what is the best temperature for decarboxylation. And what I found is that 250 degrees Fahrenheit for me was the ideal temperature. So you can see here is the THC percent, and I got the maximum, which was just over 16% at 250 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I had a range of times that I wanted to test out. How long do you cook cannabis to get the optimum result? And it turned out to be 27 minutes, which was my first attempt. I went back and I did 15 minutes and I got 8%. And I went back, I did 45 minutes and I got about 16%, so slightly less than this Peake. So if you're making edibles, I suggest that you try cooking them for 27 minutes at 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and you get the result. And as a result of that, I went back and I reran all the samples that I had tried before, which were not cooked initially, and I was getting low results. And I compared them with results that I got when I took the samples to MCR labs in Framingham. And there they do a type of analysis known as high performance or high pressure liquid chromatography. And that's the industry standard. And these machines cost anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 plus the add-ons. And over here on the right-hand column, you can see the results I got from MCR labs. 20.7% THC for the Blue Dream strain, which I got at a dispensary in Ashby. And with my machine, I got 20.7 and 19.8, 17.59. Everything went fine until I got down to this very low range. This double cherries is a hemp strain. These first three are marijuana strains, as you can tell by the THC content. So what do? How do I test hemp, which is down in this lower range? And then you can see here that the correlation is very good based upon the results. So moving on, I had this material analyzed, this hemp material at MCR Labs, and for THC, it's 0.2% in the delta form. In the acid form, it's 0.1%. So that would be a combined 0.3% THC. And for CBD, that's 4% in the acid form, 2.9 in the straight form. So about 7% CBD. So in the instructions for the gas chromatograph, they recommend that you use 100 milligrams of flower sample per 40 mils of alcohol, which was my first attempt here. So it's 100 milligrams of sample. I got 0 THC, but I got 6.19% CBD, which is relatively close to the 7% that I got from the commercial analysis done at MCR. So I decided to increase the amount of flower material that I was adding to that same amount of alcohol all the way up to 400%, and I got reasonably close to the THC percentage that I got from the commercial analysis. But of course, the CBD was through the roof. So this appears that the workaround is to take the results from the recommended amount of flower material for the CBD and then to quadruple the amount of material used to get the THC out. So it is possible to get reasonable results using this machine. Of course, they offer a $10,000 machine that does this analysis much more accurately in one pass, and also terpenes and other things. Okay, so moving on from that, here's your hemp update. On June 28th, the Senate passed the Farm Bill, which includes the language which would allow farmers to grow hemp. Currently, we have language that allows farmers to grow hemp, but only with the cooperation of a state department of agriculture or a state-run university. So there's a lot of paperwork, and it's not practical for most farmers to get in on this, and not all states allow hemp. And so this would legalize hemp federally, which would of course encourage the states to, the remaining states to allow hemp. Believe it or not, Kansas has passed a bill that will allow farmers to grow hemp. Never thought I'd see that in my lifetime. Never thought I'd see medical marijuana in Oklahoma either, but that's a reality. So we're moving at warp speed. This is good. Of course, some of you may be familiar with Charles Grassley, who famously mentioned that all Mexicans are sneaking across the border with huge backpacks full of weed, and they have calves the size of cantaloupes, and all this crazy racist, anti-cannabis language, tried to oppose this hemp bill by several different methods, but fortunately he was shut down and the bill went through the Senate, and on July 19th this language, the entire farm bill, passed to the bicameral committee, which is made up of senators and U.S. representatives who will now attempt to reconcile the language with from the Senate bill with what they want to do with the House bill. And once they do that, then it goes to Trump's desk, and in all likelihood he will sign it because a lot of people don't like Trump, but he hasn't cracked down on marijuana at all. They just leave it alone. So I'm guessing that hemp will be legal by the end of the year, which will have further implications for the CBD industry when states that have cheaper land and better soil and more rain, typically the hemp farming states in the Midwest, will be coming online with thousands of acres and combines and huge factories. So if you're going to do CBD, do it now and do it small and try to come up with intellectual property, something that will survive the impending price drop and possible oversupply situation.
I have a question pertaining to that.
Yes.
Have you seen in your studies anywhere economies of scale scenario? I mean, to get in the industry, do you need 10,000 acres? Do you need 40 acres? Do you need 5 acres? Any of that kind of data?
I haven't seen any of that data. I just picked a few case studies, and it's really hard to predict right now, even a year out, what the market is going to look like. So I'm sorry I haven't. But I can make this PowerPoint available on my website, and then you can go back and look at the numbers, the yields, and decide for yourself whether or not you think it's worth getting into. So the good news about this bicameral committee is that James Comer, who I mentioned before, has been appointed to the committee, and he's been pushing this thing for several years now. So under his leadership, it should pass. And I thought I'd also mention that Jim McGovern from Massachusetts is on the committee also. So if any of you have friends or you yourselves live in that district, it'd be worth contacting him to tell him that he's supported. And that's all I have for now.
So we can grow hemp in Massachusetts?
We can grow hemp in Massachusetts, and the license is $100 to apply, well, it's a total of $400.
$400 for
There's an application fee, and then there's a fee once you're accepted to get it. And then there are several different types of licenses. There's a cultivation license, a processing license, and then a dual license.
And where can you sell the CBD?
I've been told by a dispensary owner that they will buy as much CBD as you can sell.
All right, so yeah, it's just forming these relationships with the local dispensaries.
Right.
And CBD can be sold across state lines.
It can be.
Yeah,
So you can sell it, I believe, anywhere in the country.
Right. Well, the DEA is not enforcing it right now. Technically, it's not considered hemp under the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 because it's a solid derivative of the plant. But there's almost no THC in it. It's very unlikely that the DEA will seize your product or initiate prosecution against it.
And on a good note, the state of Massachusetts, hemp growing is protected under Chapter 40 of agricultural definition. So where cannabis was pulled out of that protection, hemp is not. So you have the Mass Department of Ag Resources full support to start planting hemp in the state.
Right, and you don't need a host agreement, and there's no home rule problems. Towns can't ban it.
The only problem you'll run into, because I've seen the documents from the FDA, they have started to find CBD companies, such as Charlotte's Web, it's one of them, is when you sell your CBD with a claim attached to it. So therein lies the dilemma. If you're going to sell it online, have your CBD, maybe have links to others who are making claims for the benefits, or links to PDFs that others own. But when you then claim it's yours, you just put yourself in a liability.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. And Charlotte's Web is not FDA approved, whereas GW Pharmaceutical has their FDA approved product, so they can make claims. But yeah, I would be very careful about saying it does anything, and they probably have companies have more scrutiny than companies that sell ginseng or something like that, just because it's associated with cannabis.
So I don't know if it falls under in the regulations for adult use marijuana economy now. We have in the regulations specific languages about marketing, and you cannot claim any sort of safety on cannabis products. So I wonder if it's the same on hemp and CBD products as well.
Well, from the FDA's perspective, you can't really make any sort of claim at all about its safety or its effectiveness because it hasn't been through the process, which of course is very daunting, very expensive.
So you were showing how the isolate and some of the CBD products prices have fallen already. But what about the opportunities when it comes to bioplastics, biofuels, people that may want to farm for those purposes? Did you see anything about that being more sustainable business model?
I do, but probably not here on Cape Cod. Probably, again, we're back to talking about thousands of acres and grown like soybeans and corn and wheat are grown. And so I encourage experimentation to develop any kind of plastic that has better qualities than existing ones. I would say go for it. As far as basing your model on growing enough plants to support the production operation in this area, I would say that's
Oh, yeah.
really don't. I pull it out.
So we run it, just would be file corruption, correct? Oh, it's just not ejected properly. All right, well, it's getting late. I didn't know if anybody else had any topics they wanted to cover, you have in your town, your business, you just wanted to highlight. Spencer couldn't be here tonight, unfortunately, and I had to take up the MCDB, so an all right job. He's deathly ill with the norovirus. If anybody doesn't get our emails, just see me, and we'll get you added to the list and everything. If you would stay up to date on what's happening around the Cape as best as we can cover it, and nights and weekends, and little time you have. We also have a change.org petition that we're getting signatures for. Just trying everything to move the needle as far as just swaying people, one or two people on the Barnstable Council, and we also have a GoFundMe to help utilize digital marketing, which would be my skill set, which is what we did in Brewster to block the ban there, was just making sure that we're utilizing tools like change.org and like Facebook to just promote it and make sure that people that want to support it can. So yeah, we're 175 into our $1,000 there. $1,000 is more than adequate to basically cover the next 30 days to make sure we have air cover, happening, keeping people informed, everything like that. So that's a shameless plug. We usually break and just the networking opportunities here, making connections, knowledge connections. I mean, that's definitely a big part of this. We usually go out there and just hover out there. And in here.
Probably nicer outside.
I was thinking we could go outside.
The crickets are chirping, the chairs and pretty flowers.
Adam, do you want to clarify the next meeting? Because I think
the
first
meeting,
Monday is on Labor Day. So.
Yeah, so the next meeting won't be the actual first Monday.
September 10th.
So we still could have the 10th.
Oh, that's
Yeah. So it'll be September 10th unless there's any obstacles to that one. But yeah, we didn't want to be on Labor Day. So it'll be the second Monday of the month next month.
Back here, 6:30?
Yep, right here, same time, same bad channel. Did you sponsor that one? Is that?
Did you say?
Yeah, I don't remember if it was,
I'm forgetting to thank our sponsors, all this stuff. I'm really messing this up. So
yeah, I don't remember if it was next month or the month after, but whatever, works for you.
we really appreciate it. This room's $175. You know, people, like Eric, have, stepped up and, said they would cover the cost of one. AJ, we paid for the first two. This is the second one. Hey, we're always looking at our change, and once we get back in the off season, I think there's extra capacity of event space. It's not the summertime, obviously. All right, hey, yeah, let's go outside. There's like a little courtyard right here, right?
One sec, take the one.